I failed you, Ben. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you are. The Resistance is dead. The war is over. And when I kill you, I will have killed the Last Jedi.
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong. The rebellion is reborn today. The war is just beginning. And I will not be the Last Jedi.
I'll destroy her, and you, and all of it.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 615 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young, host of the show. We have for you a very special installment of this podcast today. I have two interviews for you with the director of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. Although neither of these episodes are specifically focused on The Last Jedi, they both do touch on techniques that Rian used for The Last Jedi in the writing. I was able to interview him once in 2019 for Knives Out, and once again just a couple of weeks ago for the most recent Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man, which that entire trilogy so far of Benoit Blanc mysteries is absolutely terrific. If you've not watched them, you should. I think you'd get a lot more out of these interviews if you have seen them. If you haven't, I think listening to Rian just talk about his philosophy of writing is fascinating regardless. But I think you'd get a lot more out of these if you've seen not only all the Star Wars movies, specifically The Last Jedi, but also the Knives Out films, or the Benoit Blanc mysteries. Talking to Rian is a treat. He really is a master of the craft of writing. I really, truly believe that his screenplay for The Last Jedi is one of the best written of all of the Star Wars films. It really adheres to theme in a way that just is not common among movies written in Hollywood, and Wake Up Dead Man sort of builds on that in ways that are really, really wonderful in his craft. It actually shows a growth in his craft and the way he grapples issues that are personal to him through the use of these films, and getting to talk to him about this kind of stuff was really great. So we'll start with our earlier interview, and I'll tell you the audio quality of our first interview was recorded when we were both on cell phones, and then the audio quality of our second interview was recorded with good mics on Zoom. So just so you know what you're in for, this first one was recorded in 2019, and the second one was recorded, like I said, just a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't seen Knives Out, it's currently streaming wherever you'd like to buy it, or I think it's streaming on Amazon Prime. Wake Up Dead Man is still in limited release on, I think, 500 screens. And that's the preferred way to see it. If you can catch it on a big screen, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, if you can't make it out to a theater or it's not playing near you, it is streaming on Netflix, but it is pretty glorious on the big screen. So here we are with the 2019 interview of Rian Johnson talking about Knives Out and his writing process, and we do get into Star Wars a little bit.
Hey, Bryan.
Hey, it's a pleasure to finally get to speak with you person to person.
No kidding, man. No kidding. We're outside of the bonds of Twitter. Yay!
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
so
how are you?
I'm great, actually. I'm in Florida just finishing up the Rise of the Resistance opening.
Oh, my God, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it really is. And when they were like, oh, your time is right here, I'm like, I'm going to be there, but I didn't want to miss it, so.
Oh, that's great, man. I'm excited to talk.
So I want to talk about sort of screenwriting in general and your process. And I've read and listened that you sort of take the nascent idea and then something you want to say, and when the two of those click, then you're sort of off and running. And I'm sort of wondering what you're looking for in each of those before you depart on a screenplay.
Well, I mean, it's for both of those parts. For the first part, which is, usually in my case, or it has been, a genre or a type of story or something that sort of a sandbox that I feel like it would be fun to play in. It's really just kind of an emotional connection to it. It's something that it's not like I'm looking for any kind of specific ingredients. It really just has to be something that I'm excited about doing. And that anyone, if you're a writer, anyone who's reading this who's a writer understands it's the thing that kind of makes you lean forward in your chair and the thing that kind of wakes your senses up and makes you think, God, I really want to see this. And, for example, with Knives Out, it was the whodunit genre that's been something that I've been reading since I was a little kid, and that I just have a deep love of all of the conventions of. So it's very emotional. And same with the second thing. I mean, it's very similar, but a different sort of thing, where whether it's a theme or an idea or a question that I've been struggling with or something I'm excited about or angry about, some personal thing, that the main thing is just it has to be alive and current for me in that moment that I'm going to start writing. It has to be something that can be fuel for the process.
So talking about theme, it's something that I think a lot of writers, whether they're screenwriters or whether they're writers in general, it's something that they struggle with. It seems a little bit esoteric to the process, but I think you do it really well, particularly with Last Jedi. It felt like every scene and every character decision was informed by theme. And I'm wondering what tips you might give to people who are trying to approach theme and what your sort of ingredients for that are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing is making it clear that theme is not a message. Theme is not a sermon or a message or a adage or anything that you can put, on an inspirational poster or anything like that. I think for me, for theme to really fuel a story, it has to be something that is, is kind of is first of all applicable kind of to my own life, so it's alive for me. It's something that I'm actually struggling with. It's not just a nice thing that I believe. It's something that is complicated and has many different facets. Just even when you state it when you have it as a statement, and that means you'll be able to explore it from many different facets with the characters. It's not illustrating a simplistic thing over and over again. It's taking a look at a complicated thing from many different angles, and that allows you to really use it as fuel for your story. And that's, also though, this is just personally the way that I approach it. I do need something that I would call a theme that's like that, and I do build every single element of the story kind of around it. I do think the goal for me is to have literally everything in the movie be in some way, shape, or form an exploration of the central theme of the film. But like I said, that's I think where it all starts from, is that it's not a simplistic moral statement. It's quite the opposite. It's a very challenging, complicated moral statement that requires investigating and is going to be pushed and pulled and challenged throughout the course of the story.
Where did you learn screenwriting? Who were the screenwriters that you looked to? Because sometimes, like, it varies from movie to movie, but, like, sometimes I feel like the closest I can pin to, like, where I feel like your screenwriting is sort of like Billy Wilder meets Lawrence Kasdan.
Yeah. Well, those are master screenwriters who, obviously influenced, I think, so many. I mean, Kasdan's work. I mean, look, Kasdan's work, obviously, with Star Wars and with Raiders is deeply embedded in all of our psyches. Anyone who's like my age who grew up, it's deeply embedded there. But also his his non-Lucasfilm work is he's an absolute master at that, similar to Billy Wilder. I mean, I don't know. For me, I guess, and this is gonna, I don't know. I know this guy kind of. People have differing opinions about different kind of like screenwriting teachers, but I'll tell you, when I was in high school, my dad knew that I was interested in making movies, and my dad was always fascinated with movies too, even though he never worked in them. And he took me up to LA for a weekend, and he took me to Robert McKee's storytelling seminar. And I'll tell you, man, everything that I know about story structure, still to this day, I pretty much learned from that weekend. I mean, and the thing about, I'm a big defender of McKee. I really actually, and I know that, like the scene in Adaptation where Brian Cox is playing him is quite funny, but I don't know. I feel like what McKee does is he, or at least what he did for me, is he doesn't teach you formulas. What he lays out is why certain things work, to give you a basic understanding of it, not like your first act is 30 pages and then it's this for your second act and here's your midpoint, but making you understand the fundamentals of what keeps an audience hooked into a story, and why those kind of structural things are one example of many of how to tap into those fundamentals. And for me, kind of understanding that, I felt like, it took me a while to be able to, even on a rudimentary level, do it. But just having a grasp of the engineering behind storytelling at that age, I think, was really useful.
I got to tell you, one of my best days that I've ever had, because I really love McKee for the same reasons, was I was doing a whole bunch of analysis about Last Jedi, and I had no idea that he might even know I existed. And someone asked him if he'd done any work analyzing The Last Jedi, and he sent people to all my stuff, and I was like, I feel like $10 million.
No
right
kidding.
now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's amazing. Well, by extension, so do I.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So as you're sitting down, what's your process like? As far as I know, there's some people who say, like, I don't consume anything of the kind of stuff I'm writing, or I consume everything of the kind of stuff I'm writing. Like, where's your process land on that? Like, as you were working on Knives Out, I know you'd been influenced by some of the whodunits, but did you kind of go through and race through a whole bunch of them again, or what's your process like?
No, in this case, I mean, maybe I rewatched like Death on the Nile, and but no, in this case, a specific case, it was because it was something I had just always grown up watching, but also continued to watch and read and absorb until recently. It was something I had a very good grounding in. And with this specific case also, with the murder mystery, I actually did kind of avoid going back and rereading the books or studying specifics, because I think one of the traps of writing a whodunit is you can start to become in such awe of the cleverness of Christie's narrative gambits of her solutions, and that you can start thinking in terms of, how do I come up with something that's crazier than the twist in Murder on the Orient Express, or, you start thinking of the solutions to the mystery as like a super clever mousetrap you have to build or something. And I think that's a trap. I think that's coming at it from the wrong angle. I think you have to remember that even if it's a whodunit movie, it is first and foremost a movie. And so you have to, I started from the opposite end of building from the ground up with the audience's experience story-wise going through the entire thing. And not beginning with some big, crazy mousetrappy ending, but starting with, okay, what's the narrative engine that's actually going to drive this thing? The story of Marta and kind of the big picture shape of it, and then backing into what the crime was and what the solution is from there. And I think diving into specific things with her books would have maybe encouraged the less helpful first version of that,
So one of the reasons I bring up Billy Wilder is that he has this really incredible knack of assigning story weight to what would ordinarily be throwaway objects, right? Like I'm thinking the compact mirror in the apartment.
The broken mirror, I was just going to say, yeah, that's what sprung into my mind when you said that, yeah.
And with Knives Out, you did that, I think, really well to a degree with Marta and the coffee mug, right? Where you opened and closed the film with this very interesting symbol that didn't feel like it meant anything until that last shot. And I'm wondering, is that something that you're conscious of as you're writing the screenplay? Is that something that comes out in editing, or is that while you're shooting? Where is that something you're including in the screenplay and thinking about?
No, absolutely. It's something that, and it's funny that you mentioned the broken contact mirror in the apartment, because that is, for me, kind of one of the ultimate examples of that. There's also, I think this is something, I forget if McKee actually references this, the broken banister in It's a Wonderful Life, where at various points in the movie, that thing of the banister breaks off in George Bailey's hand, but it means completely different things to him emotionally in the course of it. It's his annoyance at kind of the squalidness of his life at one point, and then by the end, it's come around to he's joyous that the thing breaks off and that he's back in what is his home. And anything, and it's just a broken banister. But I think the compact is the best example of it. And yes, that's solid gold whenever you can find that. Whenever you can have a major emotional impact come from something that seems incidental when you first introduce it. That's the sort of thing that's the gold in the hills that you're digging for.
When do you decide that you need to write yourself out of that? I'm specifically thinking, and I'm trying really hard not to just talk to you about The Last Jedi. But
it's okay. I like talking.
Well, you've done so much other great work, too. I don't want to give that short shrift, but I would say Last Jedi and Brick are probably the two I studied the most. But the opening of Last Jedi, the original opening, had that pan down to Finn's medical pod, and it fit the theme really well, right? This idea that, we were seeing something, but we didn't realize what we were seeing, and we thought it was one thing, and then very quickly realize it's different, that informs the theme across. At what point do you decide that it's not working and have to go in a different direction for those traps that you're setting for yourself as you're screenwriting?
Well, that's a great example, actually, because, that was thematically encapsulated the whole movie, and it was clever and blah, blah, blah. And then when we cut it together, we were watching it, and pacing-wise, just in terms of an experience for the audience watching it, it didn't work. It was too oblique a way into the story, and we realized, the lesson over and over when you're making a Star Wars movie is cut to the chase, Cut out the fat, don't be clever, don't be oblique, get right to what's important and what's happening and explain it as clearly as possible. And that was exactly what that opening needed. And so the lesson is all of this thematic and clever, and not even clever sounds like I'm putting it down, but the genuinely thematically resonant stuff none of it is worth a dime if you aren't, if it's not, if narratively it doesn't work for the audience, you know what I mean? And actually, quite the opposite. It becomes the worst thing in the world if suddenly the audience is bored, or suddenly and then it starts to stick out like a sore thumb, and it becomes your enemy. So all of the thematic stuff at the end of the day, I was about to say you have to make it subservient to the story needs, but the truth is, ultimately those two things need to serve each other perfectly. And if they're not, if something is out of sync, then you can't say, well, sure, this is not a great opening, but it feels great thematically. No, you have to get under the hood, and you have to make it work on both levels.
What are your, and I call them sort of Swiss watch movies, where I go, I really want to watch a movie that's inspiring because the screenwriting is just perfect. What are a few of your sort of Swiss watch movies like that?
Well, you mentioned The Apartment, and that's top of the list. I mean, it's absolutely dazzling. It's absolutely dazzling what that movie does, how it pays off, how it sets up effortlessly things that seem incidental and seem, and then pays them off. It finds a way to pay them off at the end in ways that are incredibly emotionally resonant, whether it's a throwaway line, or whether it's an object, or whether it's them playing a game of gin, the fruitcake line. I mean, you can pull that movie apart for years and find the intricacies that all line up one way or another. I mean, and then, what is there? There is. It's funny. It's like when you say to somebody, name a city, and suddenly you can't think of a single city.
Yeah.
I'm shit. Okay, let's move on, and I will think of one, and we'll come back to another one, but I'll come back to it. But The Apartment, it's hard to top that.
Do you find it's, I don't know, like when I talk to people about movies and they, The Apartment is one I always mention as sort of, in my view, the second greatest romantic comedy of all time. And do you find it's hard to get people, or do you see that people aren't sort of looking back to those fundamentals from older movies?
I'm curious what the first is.
Chaplin's City Lights.
For you.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Chaplin's City Lights is
fair.
Perfect.
Yeah. Fair.
I'm glad that answer wasn't disappointing to you.
No, totally fair. So, sorry, say the question again.
So do you find that you're seeing screenwriters that aren't necessarily paying attention to the fundamentals that they can learn from those classic sorts of movies? Well, maybe, but I mean, also, I'm always loath to kind of finger wag and present movies as homework. I think a film is only useful as a reference if that film turns you on. And I think only if you are genuinely intrigued by it, inspired by it, and want to figure out how it ticks. And so I don't think there's any value in digging into something, opening up a watch that you're not interested in the face of, I guess, because that's what inspires you to dig into it. That's what makes you want to fundamentally dig into it and see how it works is a love of it. So no, I think that if somebody, I do always encourage people to look at older movies and see if they can, if they emotionally hook them. But if that's not the case and you're hooked by modern movies, I mean, The Matrix is a great example of a Swiss watch movie, a recent one, the first Matrix. That's absolutely brilliant in the way it sets up and pays off things. And so, no, but whether it's that or a more recent film that you find works for you, dig into that and figure out how it works. I think that's the important thing. Do you read a lot of screenplays? I mean, other than
I don't, actually. No, I don't. I feel like I should. I mean, I read friends' screenplays when they send them to me. Casablanca is another. I'm just randomly now thinking of all-time great Swiss Watch screenplays. Although Casablanca was the movie that at that weekend seminar that McKee kind of dissected. But anyway, no, I feel like I should read more scripts. It's a very slow, laborious process for me to read a screenplay because I'm making the movie in my head while I'm reading it. So I can't speed read a screenplay. It takes me half a day to get through a script. So I think maybe because of that, I don't. What I do quite a lot is I will watch a movie that I love and like sit there and pause and unpause it and take notes and basically diagram out time-wise, basically make like an outline of the film with like the time code of when stuff happens, and diagram it out that way. But I'll usually do that with a movie and not with a script.
What's the most surprising you've had on your it's a movie you've diagrammed? Like, I've diagrammed out like Return of the Jedi, and it's really preposterous to think that all of the Tatooine stuff happens in the first, 20 minutes.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I mean, the big one was when and this was way before I worked on Last Jedi, but I remember way back when diagramming out A New Hope and realizing that Solo doesn't show up until literally 45 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
Which is astounding. I mean, it's there's a weird clarity that happens. When I was writing Looper, I diagrammed out the movie Witness because that movie has similar structure to what I was trying to do and felt effortless in the way that it sustained the tension of the city stuff when it made this move into the country and kind of split its narrative. And it is crazy once you diagram it out and are looking at it, this thing that feels like this amorphous magic trick that just works, suddenly it is like opening the back of a watch. And you can very suddenly, very clearly see, oh my God, okay, every 10 minutes they're checking back in with the city. And the way they check in back with the city is an escalating thing that's all leading up to the guys showing up on the farm. You can just see the clockwork, and it's always fascinating. It's something I highly recommend.
Do you have an example
sorry,
like that?
We only have time for one more question.
Okay.
We only have time for one more question. Thank you.
For sure. Do you have an example like that? Like I think of the magic trick in The Last Jedi with Poe and putting Holdo offsides with the audience and then kind of showing the audience and Poe at the same time that they're wrong about their assessments of her. As you were diagramming movies out, as you were looking at writing The Last Jedi, what were you looking for? What other movies did you sort of find for inspiration as far as how that particular magic trick works? Because I think that's one of the most complicated ones, but I really love how it worked the most. And I'm really interested to see where you might have drawn examples from that.
Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, there are very good examples. I mean, actually, in the last act of Casablanca, when Rick turns over, when Rick
he gives them the
to the police. Yeah, it seems that fate has taken a hand, and we think, oh my God, there is like this brief period because it's Bogart, he's the anti-hero, and we kind of, our emotions are on the side of us wanting him to be with Bergman, we want that emotionally. And I think that's the main thing for me, and that's what's very interesting to me is it'll never work in terms of your head. You always have to tap in terms of the heart, I think, when you're doing misdirection. And you'll always have to find something where the audience is going to have, because you have to find it in yourself first, a tendency to to feel a certain way, or a bias where you tend to feel a certain way about something. And if you can find that in yourself and it's leading with emotionally, where you're leaning one way, and then if you can do a revelation where suddenly that's you gain a new perspective on that, and the weight of where your heart was pulling you is suddenly flipped around. I mean, I tried to do a similar thing with Looper, with Bruce Willis's character, where you feel this injustice and you want him to make it right, and all of this bile rises up in you that, yes, find this evil thing and kill it. And then you see the real consequences of it, and you see the real, and it turns around. I mean, that's the kind of transformative experience I'm always looking for when I sit down in a theater. And to me, that's maybe the most magical thing cinema can do, is to genuinely involve you and then change your perspective on something.
I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and
Bryan,
I
feel like we got to do this again. I feel like we could talk for another 4 hours about this.
I absolutely feel the same thing, and if you're open to it, I'd be happy to do this anytime you'd like.
Awesome. But, let's do it again.
Okay. And yeah, I'm sure we'll talk on Twitter again. So, and thank you so much. I know your time is valuable. And again, congratulations on Knives Out. It's really great.
Thanks, Bryan. I appreciate it. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
All right, take care.
Yeah, no, Rian Johnson's just one of those people that I could talk to all day about the craft of writing. And he's just such a generous and nice individual, like unfailingly so. And, he has been such an encouraging and wonderful person, just and generous with his time always, over the years, and, just such a kind person. So here we are with part 2, and this is the most recent interview for Wake Up Dead Man, and I hope this is not the last time I get to talk to Rian, because he's just such a delight. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, look forward to it.
And thanks for taking a look at my short film before. That was very, very nice of you.
Great. Dude, it was great. How's it? What's been going on?
Just doing festivals with it. It's been winning awards here and there, but no huge festivals or anything, but just working on putting together the next one.
That's great. That was really beautiful. Thanks for sharing it with me.
Thank you. Wake Up Dead Man. I want to talk about like watching it, just sort of where it came from for you as a writer, like where it started. I know the last time we talked for Script Magazine, we kind of talked about where you start with like theme or that place where you start. And for this one, where did you start as you were putting this one together?
Yeah, I mean, this one, it kind of started in my head with I guess sort of the challenge for myself of whether I could make this one about whether I could make a big, fun Benoit Blanc mystery and have it not just have the theme of faith kind of hidden underneath that, but actually use a big Benoit Blanc mystery to engage with the theme of faith. And so it started with me just kind of tapping back into my own personal experience with faith. I grew up very Christian, very Protestant, evangelical. I basically grew up a youth group kid. And but I was deeply personally Christian up through my early 20s. And then I fell away from the faith in my 20s, and I don't consider myself a Christian anymore. And so everything that's kind of wrapped up in that, there's a lot of complicated stuff going on for me. And so it was the first step was sort of digging back into that part of my life and also engaging with the things that I drew from faith that I feel like still kind of fuel me today, and the things that I didn't like so much about my time in the church, and all of that, seeing if I could have kind of a multifaceted conversation about it.
That was something I really, really responded well to, and had really enjoyed. It felt um like very much, I think, a combination of like, Graham Greene talked about how he'd write his serious novels and his entertainments, and this felt like a split down the middle between the two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's as much Ministry of Fear as it is Power and the Glory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. That was that was the kind of challenge of it. That was the intent.
And I'm wondering I mean, obviously you're going for the mystery vibe, but I mean, there is a lot of that Graham Greene sort of exploration of faith
Yeah.
in there. I mean, Father Judd feels so much like the whiskey priest.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's Green. I mean, there's also another British writer who wrote genre but was very engaged with faith in a different ways, G.K. Chesterton, and the Father Brown mysteries, which I don't know if you've read those. Those are uh, highly recommended. Those I reread all. I mean, I'm a fan of Chesterton's work anyway, and The Man Who Was Thursday is a insane novel. It's beautiful. But the Father Brown mysteries are almost like the template for this in terms of engaging uh, with serious moral questions in the context of kind of like a very genre-y story about a priest solving mysteries. But the priest, Father Brown, is a great character, and the center of him is that he is good at being a detective, not because he understands the perfect and divine, but because he understands the messed up nature of humanity, and has a genuine sort of meet it where it's at type non-judgmental attitude towards it. And so that was, I'd say I've read a lot of Graham Greene. I'm a big fan of his. I could see that connection. I would say that Father Brown mysteries were even more of a influence.
As mysteries are very much, I mean, since you came out of The Last Jedi, mystery seems to be your bread and butter,
Mm.
whether it's the Knives Out mysteries or whether it's Poker Face. Um, and even before that, obviously, you were sort of very much into that, whether it's Brick or Brothers Bloom.
Yeah.
Um, even Looper has elements of that.
Yeah.
Um, as you're designing a mystery for film, um, and you're working from theme, right? Like you're sitting down to work at your typewriter, as it were, um, and you're trying to build the mystery, but you're working with characters and theme and trying to tackle faith. How do you go about sort of structuring both of those things together? Do you work on building the mystery first? Do you work on building the characters? Sort of what order do you work on that as a screenwriter?
I mean, it's the answer I give will sound kind of clean, as you and everyone who writes knows. There's no such thing as
Yeah.
a clean process. So it is all kind of happening at once. But very broadly, I would say the thing that I start with, or really try to start with, is is um uh is the basic spine of the movie, which is essentially it's who is the main character, what do they want, why can't they get it, and then what's the shape of the movie as defined by the way that they get it in an unexpected way at the end. And that basic fundamental kind of backbone of any good story. That's I mean, all the other stuff can be kind of like brewing, and obviously the notion of theme is very much engaged with that question of what is this spine, but that's the thing that I kind of actually start with. That kind of defines the shape of it is what is the journey of the protagonist going to be. But and then I kind of, I kind of build or slot in the mystery elements to serve that journey. But I've learned that, the mystery elements, as fun as they can be, they're not going to, the process of that is not actually going to be entertaining for an audience. And I mean, it's fun, it's entertaining to watch, but it's not going to hold an audience. It's not going to involve an audience, I should say. It can interest an audience, it's not going to involve them. The only thing that can do that is, the fundamentals of a character's journey.
So Father Judd is really where this starts and ends. Is that does that make that difficult in that these are Benoit Blanc mysteries,
Yeah.
but he's sort of almost an ancillary character?
Well, no, not at all, because that's how the other two have been built. I mean, the
Yeah.
reality is that he's not the protagonist in any of them. And I think in his role as a detective and also as the main kind of companion and sort of foil to the protagonist, to Judd in this movie, he's critical to the film. I think he's still, part of the engine that makes it run. But just like the other two films, and that's another thing that I feel like I kind of struck on early, was just that uh, the Blanc can't be the protagonist. He can't be the main character. He
Mhm.
always has to be supporting the main character in some way, or foiling them and working them against them, or has to be an obstacle they have to overcome. And yeah, I actually think that's quite important to making these things tick.
I guess that makes sense when you think about a lot of mystery fiction. I mean, that goes back to Conan Doyle, where
Yeah,
Watson's always the point of view character, never Holmes.
100%. And even in
Yeah.
Christie, I mean, it's you're never really watching the movie through Poirot, or reading the book through Poirot's point of view. Poirot is, there's usually, whether Hastings is involved in it or some other character or, Murder of Roger Ackroyd. There's the small town doctor who he partners up with. I mean, there's always, um, I would say there's 90% of the time, I think,
Yeah.
that another pair of eyes you're seeing it through. And I think that lends the detective, first of all, that lends the detective a bit of a mystique. And also that, because the detective is really paired with the process of the mystery. And so, again, if you are making a movie and deciding at the outset that that the process of the mystery is not the engine that's driving the car dramatically, that means the detective is not going to really be the engine. He's going to be kind of engaging with the actual driving force.
hmm
Yeah.
One thing that's been very interesting to watch with all three of these movies is how the structure really folds in on itself.
Mm.
And I'm wondering sort of what your philosophy is on that, or how you approach that, or if that's something that just sort of comes naturally with um, just how your process works.
You mean in terms of like the time jump, sort
Yeah,
of?
well, the time jump, like with Knives Out, you have that sort of overlapping where the murder's already occurred and they're interviewing everyone, so you're sort of doing triple duty,
Yeah.
where you're introducing characters, the murder, and
Yeah.
everything all at once with Glass Onion. You go through everything twice.
Sure. Yeah.
And then with this one, you've got the letter, or
Yeah.
his confession
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's specific to each film. I do think that, I mean, for example, I think a lot of it is trying to use whatever advantages film language gives me
Hmm.
to to help me out with what are some of the more difficult things about writing one of these mysteries. So, for example, with Knives Out, the fact that with film we can hop around and we can overlap stuff and we can flash back and see different things pretty easily that means that a lot of the legwork that is the hardest part of setting up a mystery like this, which is the first act, meeting all the suspects and getting a sense of who got killed and why and all of that, um, uh, that means you can present that quicker and more clearly to the audience if you take advantage of that. Or with Glass Onion, I mean, that was kind of baked into the conception of the thing, the idea of can I can I pull off something where there's a hard reset in the middle and we see the same sequence of events, but the second time we see it, it genuinely changes the perspective we're seeing it through and reinforms it and amps it all up. With this one, I mean, I guess the kind of, you know, murder of Roger Ackroyd style framing device was, part of it was kind of inspired by, I knew that I was going to give that first act to Father Judd and that Blanc wasn't going to enter till the end of the first act. And that seemed important just because of the complexity of who Father Judd is and his conflict with Wicks and the whole thing with the church. I felt like giving him that real estate would be really important so the audience is really understands his conflict before the juggernaut that is Benoit Blanc enters the story with his own gravity. There was also, honestly, there was something that got me excited, the inspiration from the Sondheim show Into the Woods, which, has the first act is kind of narrated fairy tale wise by a narrator, and then not to spoil Into the Woods for anyone, but in the second act, the characters get sick of the way he's telling the story and basically like feed him to the ogre, and then suddenly there's no longer a narrative and the story is off the rails and they're into the woods and don't have a clear anything it feels like it could happen. And then I like that idea of the voiceover providing almost this safe comfort for the audience of we're being told this story by Father Judd, and then once that's over, the notion of oh my God, anything can kind of happen now. We're off of the track, as it were.
It felt structurally a little bit, and I know you're a fan of Columbo too, right? Where it's just like here's how everything's going, and then Columbo comes in to
right
unravel things.
It's also though it is a little. I mean, look, I've done backflips in the first two movies to avoid doing this, but this is a little bit more of a traditional whodunit structure, even beyond. You're right, the How Ketchum structure has that too, but in a lot of Christie's books, the first whatever 30, 40 pages are setting up the town, meeting all the suspects, getting a sense of who gets killed. Maybe you hear about this strange little Belgian guy who's moved in across town, but it's not until the murder happens and, at the end of the first act, really, that he shows up. So in that way, I thought, well, there's a little bit more traditional structure and it'll suit this well.
Not to say that Wake Up Dead Man isn't funnier, that it doesn't have its funny moments, but it's definitely more serious in tone than the first two.
Yeah.
Was there a concern on your part, or was there any worry as you were writing it that it would feel like a little bit of a left turn for a Benoit Blanc mystery, or was there just a confidence on your part that Benoit Blanc mysteries could handle that sort of swerve?
I mean, I hesitate to use the word confidence. Talking to another screenwriter who knows we're never confident. we're always swinging at a pinata with the blindfold on to some extent and hoping it connects. But I'll say this: it was important to me that because I guess to me the danger I potentially saw in coming out of Glass Onion, which was, I mean, it's very, I love that movie. It's exactly what we wanted to make, a very kind of Last of Sheila-esque, a big, broad vacation comedy. However, and that's as part of the reason why I want to make the next third movie right away and dive into it, as opposed to doing something else first. I could see if the audience thinks this is a graft trajectory, they think that from Knives Out to Glass Onion, this is just the slope that the series is going to continue on, and it's just going to be another big fun destination movie, and it's going to get bigger and broader with each one and kind of be a comedy. I kind of, for me, I wanted to show, I guess, to myself also, and to prove to myself that no, these movies can really be anything. And I can not only that, okay, in that case, let me take one of these movies and try and genuinely dive into one of the most, deeply personal things in my life, and see if it can hold that and handle it. And I hope, I think the movie still, I can't imagine I can't imagine ever making anything that didn't have humor in it and wasn't funny to some degree. But I definitely also felt like it was a feature, not a bug, that it toned the wackiness down a bit, and then it engaged on a more grounded level.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see what you're saying in that there's definitely an alternate universe where the Knives Out mysteries could have gone the direction of the Pink Panther movies, where,
Sure. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, Glass Onion is as sharp and as great as A Shot in the Dark, but
yeah.
then, maybe it could have gone the other way.
Well, yeah, and it's yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and look, that could have been that could have been fun. And that's the other thing, is like down the road, maybe we'll go, we'll have one that's tonally more comic again, but I wanted to show that it's not necessarily going to just continue to be that. And also, honestly, that these movies are not going to just be defined by a big glamorous destination. That it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to Paris this time, and oh, this one's in
Mhm.
Alaska. The notion that, okay, no, this is a small town mystery, and what defines it is uh, the tone of it, and the characters, and the type of mystery it is.
I want to ask about um, just sort of like your writing process in general, from conceiving the idea to actually getting it onto the page.
Uh-huh.
What what's your typical writing process? How do you go from that? Like, do you out like what sort of outline do you go through? What's your general creative
Yeah.
regimen?
Ugh, yeah, it's a mess. No, I work in notebooks. I work in little pocket-sized moleskin notebooks, and I work in those notebooks for the first maybe 80% of the process. So I will, and that's a combination of just kind of free writing, like talking through myself, the theme and characters and ideas and big picture ideas and details. Sometimes I'll draw shots if I come up with them. But the big thing I'm doing in those is working towards kind of the graphic outline of the movie. And the way I do it is I'll draw a line across, the page, which is like 5 inches long, these small pages, and then I'll crosshatch it and kind of just lay out for myself visually the a map of the movie, on a timeline. And it helps me, especially with these movies, to start there and kind of to develop in that space as long as I can, because in this form that can tend towards complexity very easily, being able to hold the simple arc that we talked about, literally see it visually in one visual gulp on one small page, um, helps me stay connected to kind of the simple, the simple spine of the thing. So I find it really useful to stay in the notebooks forever. And then inevitably I stay in them too long and end up just, okay, it's time to type pages. And then I look at the calendar and realize I'm 3 months past the deadline I told my producer I'd have it by, and then I panic and start writing. Yeah.
Um, how much change, like how when you actually get it into the computer and have a script draft, um, do you iterate drafts a lot between having a first draft and then going to shooting? What, how many changes do you go through between that part of the process?
A lot, and more than a lot on this one. This one was a beast. This was the hardest thing I've ever written. I rewrote it more than anything I've ever written. And I probably, yeah, went through, yeah, I would say, because and this is after doing the whole outlining process and after laboriously kind of planning the whole thing out. I would say even after that, I probably went through, yeah, 20 to 25 drafts of it. And I probably in that first act, like I think I have literally like 5 or 6 complete throwaway drafts of the first act that were totally different. And because the first act is always the hardest part. So even with all of that planning, it's still, I mean, that doesn't save you from writing being rewriting. And,
Yeah.
but it does kind of give you a basis when you're rewriting to kind of go back and reference and look back at your map and say, okay, where did I go wrong here? Or, okay, this kind of sunk into the swamp a little bit here of complexity. Let's go back to the map and see what is there a simpler way to connect these two nodes on the line.
What are some of the things that caused some of that rewriting? Is some of that um uh like is some of that, I don't know. I talked a lot to Tony Gilroy about Andor, and he was talking a lot about how production design really caused a lot of his rewrites.
Yeah.
Just physical limitation of space or things like that. Like
Oh, right,
what
right.
what sort of things are causing some of those rewrites as you get closer to production or even in production?
Well, I mean, for me, it's more fundamental than production considerations because
Hmm.
the reality is also with these. I mean, if I can only imagine the logistics with something like Andor,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and also the budget limitations, even if you've got a very healthy budget for something like that. For this, because it is a more limited, because there are essentially like 4 or 5 main sets, and there's really one big main set, which is the church. And because we were putting all our eggs in that one basket and so much of the movie takes place there, I could design that just to the needs of what I wanted. So most of my rewriting came just from it not working on the page, just from
Hmm.
feeling like it was sometimes clarity, although that's always the easiest thing to fix. The bigger thing was tone. The bigger thing was
Hmm.
especially in regards to the religious elements, like if it felt like it was yeah, if it felt like there uh if it felt like it was, yeah, I don't know, didactic or finger waggy one way or the other, which
Hmm.
in the beginning it kind of did, and I kind of realized came down to how I wrote the character of Father Judd. I kind of realized it wasn't working because I was writing him from my perspective right now, and I had to kind of become a method actor and really put myself back to when I was a believer and really put myself back to seeing through those eyes in order to write Father Judd in a way that felt honest.
Um, and what about writing in the editing room? How much changed from that shooting draft to
Yeah.
um the editing room?
It's a great question. There's no simple answer for it, except that, I mean, the editing is, for me, the completion of the writing process, absolutely. And I mean, but it's also, I don't know, with these movies, one thing that you don't end up doing is shuffling in a big way in the edit,
Hmm.
which other genres, like even with Last Jedi, that did happen. Like it's, oh, wait a minute, we moved this over here, this thing where we're intercutting these storylines. If we connect this up over here, that'll work better. You don't really do that in these movies just because it is a little bit more linear and locked in with the mystery narrative. But what you do is being shocked at what you can cut. And pacing is always what you're fighting, and it's always and clarity to some degree, but usually clarity in the edit means you have to clear out some clutter. So it means, okay, we don't set up 5 things to set them up to pay them off at the end. We just pick these 2 which are important and cut those other ones out. And suddenly, I don't know, very quickly you start thinking in terms of what is your real estate, not even in terms of screen time, but in terms of audience attention and the amount of brain power you're asking the audience to spend tracking all this stuff. So anyway, long rambling way of saying the writing absolutely continues into the edit.
Is there anything in the edit that you feel like you lost that you were really excited about in the writing that you?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. But that happens every time. I mean, I think especially if you're excited about something in the writing, it's generally a bad sign. It's a
Mhm.
sign that that's what's going to end up getting cut. Uh, David Mamet talks about the audition scene, And there's always a scene that's like a beautiful monologue that completely defines the character, and it's usually the scene that the actor will use to read and audition for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason they got the part. And you'll leave it in the movie and be in love with it, and then you'll get in the edit and realize you always have to cut the audition scene. Not because it's not good, but because it inevitably is stopping to explain to the audience something that they need to be understanding in, on a more basic, less wordy level, I guess. And yeah, there was definitely one of those in this movie where there was a longer monologue one of the characters had, and that character did it so beautifully. And I ended up in the edit just very late in the process. I literally went, "Oh, wait a minute, this is the audition scene." Ended up cutting it down to just maybe 20% of what it originally was, and it was so much more powerful for the character. So yeah, that just happens.
For I've got time for probably just another question, but for screenwriters, like, what advice do you have for screenwriters, especially screenwriters that are looking to do mysteries?
Yeah.
Like, what would you tell them embarking on such a journey?
I mean, I'm always hesitant to phrase anything as advice. I mean, one thing that I guess that I have to keep relearning on every script, but that ends up being just just sort of the guiding principle, and we've talked about already in our conversation, is especially with the mystery form, you can't mistake the reveal of information for a dramatic turn, and you can't mistake surprise for dramatic climax. And so clue gathering and process is never, it's fun, and it seems like it's the stuff that mysteries are built out of. The reality is those have to be ornaments you hang on the tree. You need to always be thinking in terms of story, story, story. And that means, who are you invested in? Why are they in trouble? Why is the audience leaning forward, wondering if they're going to get out of it? You have to be building a roller coaster ride for the audience in every single scene, as opposed to building a crossword puzzle for them to solve.
Yeah, no, I really loved that moment with Father Judd and Benoit Blanc when they're trying to call about the
Oh yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah,
trying to call about the thing, and I think that's the scene more than most that reminded me of Power and the Glory, where it's like, I
yeah,
need the information that's going to clear my name, but
yeah,
you need a priest now. And it's such a great character moment, and it overrides all the clue gathering.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
it
yeah.
sweeps out. It absolutely kind of, and but it also it's interesting because in a way it looks like the story is slamming to a halt there. I think the reality is, if you look under the hood, the opposite is happening there, where
Mhm.
it's a big dramatic change that happens, and suddenly it's I don't know. And that's what you always have to be focused on, is what is the reversal that is happening in every scene,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you and me, we could just talk all day about screenwriting, man.
Yeah. No, I'd love to. I'd love to. I wish we could do this more often. Yeah, no, he is just a really smart writer and understands the craft of writing. And yeah, I could absolutely talk screenwriting with him all day and would love to. I hope one day our paths cross to the point where we could actually do that. So like I said, The Last Jedi, always worth rewatching. That's how I'm going to spend my New Year's Eve, as I always do. I always spend my New Year's Eve watching something explode for midnight. This year, it's going to be the Holdo maneuver, so that I get to spend the end of my year and the beginning of my year with some Star Wars. And the last couple years, it's been The Last Jedi, and this year will be no different. And it's always the best way to close out and ring in a new year. And The Last Jedi is the one that makes me feel the best not because it ends in some great place. You know, it has that same sort of down vibe that Empire Strikes Back has, but with that tinge of hopefulness that Empire Strikes Back has, or Attack of the Clones does. But because there's something about such good writing that just makes me feel great, right? Like, it's the same way Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid does. William Goldman's writing in that just makes me feel giddy because of how good it is, even though it ends on such a downer. Or Network, right, by Patty Chayefsky, directed by Sidney Lumet. Like, the writing is just so good. It just makes me feel good to luxuriate in such good writing. And The Last Jedi does that for me. And all the Knives Out movies do that for me. In fact, I can't think of a Rian Johnson movie that hasn't done that for me. So as far as I go, you can find me at swankmatron.com. And I just had a part 2 of my serial novel that's part of Mike Stackpole's Chain Story project come out at chainstorycore.com. And that's the, it's called In the Land of the Giants is what part 2 is called. And it's about a mouse who is a great warrior that rides a cat. Think Redwall meets Conan. And I think you'll have a lot of fun. The stories are free. Mike curates sword and sorcery stories on chainstorycore.com that are free every couple of weeks, so you'll probably want to just check that website out anyway. And you can find me on social media at Swankmatron. And as far as Full of Sith goes, you can go to fullofsith.com and get the entire back catalog of episodes. We've got over 700 releases on there that you can listen dating back to 2013, so you can listen to the entire lead up to Force Awakens, everything, just after the Disney sale and beyond, and sort of time travel through what it would be like to not know everything all the way up through to where we are now, as we look toward Mandalorian and Grogu coming out next year. Be sure to send us emails at holocron@fullofsith.com and, rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it. And as far as, that, I think that's everything. So for super producer Mike Pilot and for Holly Fry, I'm Bryan Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.